Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about where I surpassed Gary Gygax. All right. And where I surpassed Gary Gygax is with the three revelations. And the revelations are class, species, name. Okay. So Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition has the page 4 DMG rule. Right? The page it has the DMG page 4 direction. Okay, and it says the rules are not in charge, you are in charge, and it is an echoing command from Gary Gygax coming down, across the greater creators, right? Gary to Lorraine Williams, to Ryan Dancy, to Robert Hansu, to Mike Merles, straight to Christopher Perkins, straight to Amanda Heyman, right? And it is saying, and it's brought to us to say, hey, can you beat Gary? Right? That's the thing that's so special about Dungeons and Dragons is every other game in the world, they're like, hey, here's the rules, follow them. And Dungeons and Dragons is like, hey, here's the rules. That's the start. Change them, right? And so when you change a Dungeons and Dragons, and this drives me crazy. I'm so desperately trying to get people to understand this. There is no D&D homebrew. Homebrew doesn't exist, right? The term homebrew only serves to tell, every time you hear somebody say, my D&D homebrew, that run for the hills. That person sucks at Dungeons and Dragons. Changing Dungeons and Dragons doesn't make it not Dungeons and Dragons, right? You have to change it as a dungeon master for it to be Dungeons and Dragons, right? So running raw D&D is not running D&D. You have to change something, right? And that's when it becomes D&D. And there is no homebrew. There's just Dungeons and Dragons, and your Dungeons and Dragons is custom, and my Dungeons and Dragons is custom, and both are Dungeons and Dragons, right? Now, if you throw everything out, and if you ever reach a point where you don't have the DMG, the PHB, and the MM at the table, then you got a problem, right? But until that happens, you're playing D&D. No matter what you changed, right? Unless you changed everything. You can't change everything, right? And you can't change nothing. That's pretty much the only rule. You cannot change everything, and you cannot change nothing. Okay? All right. So, but that, the rules aren't in charge. You are. That one fateful line, echoing all the way down from Gary Gygax, is Dungeons and Dragons saying, "Can you beat Gary?" Is your best idea, is the best rules change you made to Dungeons and Dragons better than the worst thing Gary wrote? Can you beat Gary, right? And a good dungeon master always beats Gary at one rule. And I've done it, right? So in my humble opinion, you can tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. All right. So here we go. You ready? All right. So my rules change for Dungeons and Dragons that beats Gary's worst rule, right, is the following, and it's called the 3 revelations, right? And so what are the 3 revelations? So I run Dungeons and Dragons with Legos, right? And I have fully accepted Lego's invitation and Dungeons and Dragons invitation to click every single Dungeons and Dragons realm directly to every single Lego world, right? That's why they built this set, in my humble opinion, and I'm accepting the invitation. And I have begun to use Lego to create a visual language that massively accelerates how fast the story can be told in Dungeons & Dragons. And that's why Lego was added to Dungeons & Dragons, to allow us to massively accelerate Dungeons & Dragons. And you can throw your Hero Forge throw it in a lake. You can throw your Dwarven Forge in a lake. It's all junk compared to what miniatures will be and what terrain will be the second the Lego D&D Dragon's Keep Journey's End set hits. Because at that point, every single Lego world is clicked to every single D&D realm. It's just the way it is, all right? I'm sorry that I keep sniffing. It's allergy season. My apologies. It offends some of my viewers. If you guys really want sniff-free, allergy season-free viewing, Dungeon Dudes got you guys covered. If you want the best production values, you are certainly in the wrong place. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so please excuse me. All right, so so let's talk about the 3 revelations. So what I do is I start. So what I've been able to do with this, you will not believe this. What I have been able to do with Lego D&D, right, is I've abandoned the character sheet. It serves no more purpose, right? And so what I do is I literally put down 13 minifigs, which represent the 12 core D&D classes, right? And one more. Do you know it? Can you guess it? It's the Artificer. Okay, and I think that did come from Eberron. The Artificer came from Eberron. So there are 13 base classes in Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I put down a minifig that you can visually see every single, and I say, I put them on the table and I said, the game is beginning now. You are about to give me your first revelation. And they're like, well, where's my character sheet? You don't get a character sheet. First thing you're going to do is you're going to pick your class, right? And then I ask, who has been playing Dungeons & Dragons the longest? And that veteran of Dungeons & Dragons gets to choose first. And yes, you just got it, right? Yeah. This new format makes sure that you really don't have any duplicate classes, right? And so first person picks up a fighter. Second person picks up a monk. Third person picks up a bard, right? The minifig, right? And the minifig of the bard, of course, has a guitar, right? And so and at that point we're playing, right? And you're like, wait, how can you play? You don't know your species, and you don't know your species, and you don't know your name. That's right? And I say, thank you for your first revelation, right? And then I give them experience for giving me their first revelation, and they've earned their first experience, and the game has literally started, right? And so, how does the player play without knowing their name, their player character's name, or their player character's species? Well, get this. What they get to do is there's no pressure. It completely releases the pressure of the character sheet, right? So, once I know your class, right? You get X. No, I give you a +1 in your mentals or your physicals, and a +3 in the other, right? Across the board. And what are your skills? They're every single skill that class is proficient with, and that's it. You can and then your proficiency bonus, and your physical attributes, and your mental attributes, and your proficiency are all represented in Legos in front of you on the board with your minifig. And that's it. We're running, right? And I can make every single skill check in the game, right? And you're like, well, wait a second. What do I have? What am I able to do with this character, with this class? Guess what? You're able to do every single thing that character can do, regardless of level. And this is at level 1. And you're like, wait a second, they can do everything the class can do? That's right, right? So your character sheet is literally your book, right? If you have and so you're like, well, how is that fair? How's that balanced? So here's what happens. Anything that your character can do at level 1, you can do with no ramifications. If you do anything that is higher than level 1, at level 1, I can call a check on you, right? And if I call a check on you, you have to make the skill check that, actually the skill or attribute check that I require. And if you get a 1 on that roll, right, your character, if anything you do is 5 levels above your character sheet, above your level, if it's up to 5 levels above your level, and you roll a natural 1, you fall unconscious. You could do anything literally up to level 20, right? At level 1. If you rolled and I check you, I call you for a check, and then you roll a natural 1, you die. No save. Done. Right? So and you're like, wait, what about subclasses? You have every subclass. You can do every single thing the class can do. Right? So at this point, the character sheet is meaningless, right? Your character, you are your class, right? And you could do everything your class can do at level 1, But if you try to do something above your level that you're not allowed to, you'll either fall unconscious or you'll die, right? If you fail your check, right? And and the thing that I love about this is the people who've never played Dungeons and Dragons, they love it because it's just, and even the people who have played Dungeons and Dragons, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry that I'm going to spend 8 months getting up to 4th level and then, you know, somebody leaves and the game falls apart, right? I get to do all the cool stuff now. It is amazing, right? So, okay, so you could do all this with just your class. What about your species? What about your name? Well, you can reveal them immediately if you want, but I highly actually reward waiting, right? So you can wait, right? And you can reveal your species in like session 3, session 4. You've had an idea of what's important, which species are showing up a lot or not showing up at all, which species might actually be helpful to the group, right? And then 2-3 sessions after that, you reveal your name, right? But now your name can connect to any of the NPCs that have been out there, right? And so in session 1, you know, you're the cloaked rogue. In session 3, you are the turtle cloaked rogue. And in session 7, you are the turtle cloaked rogue named the Gray Blade, right? And so and each one of these is a revelation. It is a revelation to you as the player. It is a revelation to me as the dungeon master. It is a revelation to everyone else at the table, right? And it takes pressure off of deciding everything at once. And since I'm actually building the player character sheet out literally within seconds of the game and representing it physically with a visual language, nobody has to look at the character sheet to see what they are. They see a minifig with 2 daggers. They know it, right? And it's fascinating, right? And I think this is better than Gary's worst rule, right? And so I call it the 3 revelations, and it has utterly transformed Dungeons and Dragons and how we play it and how we and we are also exploring this idea that there are 3 revelations in every character. And it's also inspiring that, like, you don't have to decide everything at once. You can let the world emerge and make decisions in response to the world you are living in the Dungeons & Dragons game. It is powerful, it is exciting, it is joyful, right? And I think it's truly the best thing I've ever come up with for Dungeon DMG page 4. The rules aren't in charge, you are, right? It's the best movement I've ever made to take advantage of that freedom that echoes straight down from Gary, right? Across all the greater creators of Dungeons & Dragons. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.